I tried being a pirate once. It was hard. Good morning and welcome to Whenever You Are. I am Bandit Haze, and today I'm going to be talking about Uncharted 4: A Thief's End. Now, this is going to be more of an in-depth review. I'm going to be talking about the gameplay, the story, the history. I am not going to be talking about the multiplayer because I think that's probably best saved for another video. Totally nothing to do with the fact that my PlayStation Plus has run out and I can't afford to replace it right now. Nothing to do with that at all. Now, I'm not going to be talking about any key plot points, but if you haven't played Uncharted 4 already, then some of the things I'm about to say might be considered spoilers. So if you haven't played it, you may wish to do that first. But if you have played it, or you just don't care, then let's walk the plank. Arrgh. Alright, let's talk about the gameplay first of all. Now, this game pretends to be a third-person cover-based shooter. I'm going to say that again, just to be clear. It pretends to be a third-person cover-based shooter. It is not a third-person cover-based shooter. The truth is, in most scenarios, cover is next to pointless because you are constantly being surrounded by enemies. In previous games, most enemies kept their distance. In this game, most enemies do not. They come at you from all angles. They come at you from the left, from the right, from the front, from the back, from above. They just come at you, and later on you got these armored heavies with shotguns to deal with, and they just like storm you. It gets ridiculous. And if you're playing it on Crusher, which is the highest difficulty, you'll more often than not find yourself with low ammo and weak weapons while all that is happening. Which segue, this is, in my opinion, the hardest Uncharted game on Crushing, but not so much because of the aforementioned low ammo, not because the enemies take long to kill, and definitely not because the enemies use an advanced AI, because they don't really. It's mainly because the enemies constantly spam grenades at you all the time. Just one grenade after another, another grenade, and another grenade, and another grenade. They just constantly spam grenades at you. It's like you get a grenade coming in, you roll out the way, grenade explodes, get back into cover, pop your head up. No, another grenade is coming. So you roll out the way, get back into cover, another grenade is coming. Get out the way, grenade explodes, get back into cover, another grenade. It's just constantly lobbing grenades at you. It gets ridiculous. It gets to a point where it's just more annoying than hard. It's like the equivalent of somebody selecting Eddie Gordo and just spamming the spin kicks just constantly, and they think that makes them good at the game because they beat you a few times. Like, no, you're not good at the game, you're just spamming the spin kicks. That takes absolutely no dexterity at all to spam the spin kicks with Eddie Gordo. You know, it's just like that, except it's the computer doing it, and it has zero chill, and you can just feel the whole thing just looking at you with these like beady eyes, just looking at you like it throws another grenade, and you're just gonna keep throwing grenades, and it's just looking at you like, and here's another grenade, and you're like, seriously, can you give me 2 seconds? Can you just give me 2 seconds? Like, no, here's another grenade. And anyway, there is somewhat of a saving grace with all that. When you complete the game on any difficulty, you get some points which you can use to buy bonus items and game modifiers, so like weapons, infinite ammo, slowdown time, things like that. And these can be used at any time during the game, and they do not affect trophies. So it kind of helps you out a little bit. But even with that, it is no walk in the park. It's more like a walk in the jungle or a swim with the sharks. Arrgh. To get through this game, especially on the high difficulties, to get through this game, it's going to require a lot of patience and a lot of swear words. Alright, so the story now. Now, overall, it is a great story. It's treasure hunters searching for pirate treasure. It's a pretty cool story. I like that the story goes right back to Nathan's days in the orphanage and explains how he got the name Drake and why they believe Sir Francis Drake had his. Now, speaking of his, I did hear that some people thought that the story in Uncharted 4 doesn't match up with the previous games, because in Uncharted 3, Catherine Marlowe said that Nathan's mother committed suicide, whereas in Uncharted 4, the mother's former employer Evelyn said she got ill. And also, Uncharted 3 shows young Nathan meeting Sullivan and Sam is not there, whereas in Uncharted 4, Sullivan is not in nor is mentioned in any of the young Nathan scenes. Now, here's how I think the stories do actually match up. Nathan meets Sully after he leaves the orphanage, and yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm not sure why that confused people actually, but there you go. Now, as far as Sam not being in Uncharted 3 goes, Nathan does tell Elena in Uncharted 4 that after the orphanage, either one of them was in jail or both of them were, so apparently Nathan met Sully at a time when Sam may have been in prison. Now, with the mother, there's various things that could be. Maybe one of them lied. You know, Catherine Marlowe wasn't exactly the biggest Nathan Drake fan, so perhaps she lied to Nathan about his mother committing suicide. Or what I think was going on is that Evelyn was being just a little bit sensitive to the fact that she was talking to young children about their mother's passing and just used the term she got ill as a nicer way of saying it, even though she did have a gun pointed at them not that long before. But that's what I think happened. So as best as I can tell, there are no inconsistencies in the stories, at least nothing that can't be reasonably explained. There are some things, however, I didn't like about the story. Well, not so much the story specifically, more so the research behind the story. Now, with Uncharted 1, 2, and 3, there was a lot of truth behind them, and where there was no truth, or at least no proven truth, there were real life legends. So the stories that the games created were a blend of that truth and fantasy mixed with their own creativity. Now, with Uncharted 4, seems like the same level of research just wasn't done. Now, to be fair, there isn't a whole lot known about pirates, and out of what is known, much of it is unreliable from unreliable sources. But they did bring up Libertalia as a rumored secret pirates utopia, which is a real theory. But there's zero mention of Captain Jim's mission, who is believed to have founded Libertalia. Also, there was no mystery surrounding Thomas Tew's death. He died during the Gunsway heist. That much is known. But if they wanted to give Henry Avery a pirate's partner, Edward England, who is actually mentioned in the game, Edward England might have been a better choice for that, because he respected Avery so much he named his own ship, the Fancy, after Avery's ship. And at the time, these pirate captains were supposedly found in Libertalia, and Bonny would have most likely been an infant. Now, her birthday is a little contested, but best guesses puts it around 1700, so she probably hadn't even begun speaking yet. And that's just on my basic ass research. Now, I'm not saying that any of this makes the story rubbish, because it doesn't. I just think it's a shame that they seemingly skimmed heavily on the history behind the game. Okay, so let me talk now a little bit about my favourite character, or at least my favourite new character anyway, Nadine Ross, because Nadine Ross was awesome. Well, mostly awesome. I'll explain what I mean. But she had one of the best introductions to a new character I've seen in a good while. I don't mean the first time you see her, because the first time you see her is at the auction. She's talking to Sully and she's being all nice and all that kind of stuff. But her real introduction comes when she meets Nathan, when she walks into the room and she's like, "You're not supposed to be here." That's her real introduction. Because they kind of get into it a little bit, the mood changes, the camera pans behind her, she's taking her shoes off, and you just know shit's about to get real. You just know an arse whooping is coming, because it's like when you're a kid and you get in trouble and your mum takes her shoes off to whoop your ass. It's like anytime a woman takes her shoes off, shit's about to get real. That's what that means. And the way they did it in that scene was awesome, because you know this woman is a fighter. She's a badass. But here's the thing. I thought the fact that you don't get to fight Nadine Ross as the final boss was a little bit disappointing, because throughout the whole game, you know, she's shown to be an ass kicker. She kicks her ass at the auction. She kicks Nathan's and Sam's ass in their building, and, you know, when Sam then points the gun at her. And then you get to the end and you fight Rafe. And I get it, you know, Rafe is the main antagonist, but at no point is he shown to be any kind of, you know, fighting guy, you know, or any kind of sword guy. It's just like, it just kind of came out of nowhere, really, a little bit. So I would have had that be a fight with Nadine Ross instead. Now, here's how I would have done it. Now, most of it I'll keep the same, but there's a part where Elena is telling Nathan that Nadine inherited Shoreline from her father and they were in financial trouble. So I would have had that be her main reason for partnering with Rafe to find a treasure, because she's trying to get her company out of this financial hardship. Now, there's a couple of parts in the game where Rafe shows Nadine that he's not exactly a trustworthy person. Like, there's a part when Sam's pointing the gun at Nadine and Rafe is all like, "Well, go ahead and shoot her, go ahead and shoot her." And it turns out that Sam would have actually shot her. He doesn't, because Nathan stops him, but he would have actually shot her. And you can tell that Nadine is a little bit ticked off, shall we say. Now, I would have had that be the point where she starts to really think about, you know, this guy, I can't trust him. I need to think about how to get him out of the picture and keep the treasure for myself. Not come out and say it, but that'd be the point where I would have had to start thinking about it. Then at the end, or towards the end, when Rafe has bought off one of the mercenaries and he's turned him against Nadine, and he says that a mercenary's loyalty is bought and earned, I would have had that be the point where Nadine is really like, okay, I really need to get this guy out of the picture now. I can't trust him. I need to think about myself. I need to get this guy out the way as soon as possible. So when you come to the final scene where Rafe is pointing the gun at Nathan, Nathan's pointing the gun at Rafe when they're in the treasure room, and then Nadine comes in and she takes Nathan's gun, and then she points the gun at Rafe and takes his gun. Now in the game, she walks away. She's all like, well, you know, screw you guys, I'm going home. Right now, I would have had that be a part where she actually shoots Rafe, kills him, shoots him point blank in the back of the head. Then she's about to shoot Nathan, but you know, you manage to get the gun out of her hand, you know, knock out the hand or whatever, and then you get into a fight. And that would have been a point where you're like, okay, how do you beat this woman? Because you already kicked her ass when it was just Nathan and Nadine. She kicked her ass when it was Nathan and Sam against Nadine. I mean, not easily, but you know, she still did it, and she got the best of both of them. So when you get to this final bit where it's now Nathan and Nadine, Sam is incapacitated, how do you beat her? And I would have had that be like an epic final battle between Nathan and Nadine, and then somehow, some way, you manage to best her. Or not, you know, maybe you don't. Maybe she kills you and then kills Sam because, you know, that'd be another way to end it. And speaking of ending, by the way, segue into what I'm about to say next. Now, Neil Druckmann has said that the way they've ended the game, the way they've ended Uncharted 4, it would be really difficult to bring Nathan Drake back in another Uncharted game. And that isn't true. That's not even close to being true. That's not even half true. The way they ended the game, they could easily bring Nathan Drake back in another game. The question, of course, is, should you bring Nathan Drake back in another game? Now, personally, I think this. I think that it is better to end on a high than it is to milk it into obscurity, and they're definitely ending on a high. Uncharted 1 was fantastic, Uncharted 2 was fantastic, Uncharted 3 was fantastic, Golden Abyss was pretty good as well, and Uncharted 4 is superb. So they're definitely ending on a high. They've had a pretty good run, so if they end it now, if they never bring it back, regardless of whether they can or not, if they never bring Nathan Drake back, or never even do another Uncharted game again, I would be totally fine with that. However, if they really wanted finality, like if they really wanted a way that they could just not bring Nathan Drake back, there are much more final ways they could have ended it. So for example, when you're swimming towards the cliff exit as it's crumbling in, you and Sam are swimming towards the exit and it kind of fades to white, and it's at that point you kind of think, did they make it out? Did they make it out? And of course they do. You could have had it just they didn't make it out, right? You could have had the cave crumbled in, neither of them made it out, and they just died there, and maybe the last shot is Elena crying to Sully, I didn't even tell him that I was pregnant. That could have been one way of ending the game. Or it could be that after you beat Rafe and you're trying to free Sam from the log that you couldn't, and then a ship falls in and then you're both trapped, and then there's drowning, and then the two brothers just hold hands, you know, like in Toy Story 3. They could have done that, they just drowned, except in Toy Story 3, you know, I won't go into that, but they could have done that, but they just hold their hands, accepting their fate, and it's like, you know, they've been looking for this treasure their whole lives, they finally found it, and now they're going to die once they find it. So they could have had that as a beautifully sad ending. They could have done that. Or they could have done this. They could have had that they make it out the cave, they get into the plane, they're going home, they're flying home, there's a thunderstorm, and the plane crashes and they all die. Clearly, I'm a psychopath, but whatever. That would have been a more final way of ending the game. But as I said in my review, it's a great game, it's a great story, and sure, I could pick up part, and there's always something else you could have done, but in the end, what they delivered was a fantastic experience, and that's what really matters. But that said, I would still like to see what Amy Hennig's version of Uncharted 4 would have been, because she worked on it for about 8 months before, you know, whatever happened. So I would still like to see what she would have done with Uncharted 4, and hopefully we would one day. Of course, it's not going to be called Uncharted 4 or Uncharted anything, but hopefully, you know, we do get to see her version of that in the form of another game at some point. So just something I'm putting out there. If Amy Hennig, I don't know what she's doing next, but if she ever hears this, or I don't know, probably not, but I'm just putting it out there, putting it out into the universe. Ask and you shall receive, as some people say. So I'm just putting it out there. I would like to see what Amy Hennig's version of Uncharted 4 would have been, and hopefully that's something that happens one day. But anyway, and that is what I think of Uncharted 4: A Thief's End. What do you think? Pirate booty, or that needs to stay buried? Let me know down below, and if you liked this video, give it a like and share it amongst your friends. If you did not like it, then give it a dislike and share it amongst your enemies. Either way, let me know your reasons in the comments. Subscribe if you have not already. Thank you for watching, and until whenever, if ever, the problem isn't the problem. The problem is your attitude towards the problem. But that's not what this is about. This is about representation. People want a hero they can identify with, someone they can see themselves in. They want to feel like this is a person just like me, and if he can do it, then gosh golly, I can do it too. Which, I totally get, I totally understand that. Well, I also believe that since none of us will never know what it's like to be a World War II lab experiment frozen in time for 70 years, then having to learn to adapt to a whole new world, Captain America ain't really representing anybody but Captain America.